So question number one, why do you want to be a Langley School Board trustee?
All right, so I believe strongly in consistency, so I'm going to try to answer it the same way I've been answering it for everybody. I am semi-retired, thus I have the time and I have the skill. I'm a chartered accountant and a CPA and a second-tier CPA. So I want to contribute back. I'm a public service kind of guy. Have been doing public service through Rotary for 25 years. So this is just an avenue of public service for me as I enter retirement or semi-retirement. I strongly believe in the school system. I have 4 children who went through the Langley school system, and it's something I actually waited until they'd all graduated before I came involved. I do not want to be a special interest candidate. I think that's dangerous. So that's probably less than 2 minutes.
It was a challenge to me. And during the provincial election, if Megan wins, why don't you run for council? And it wouldn't leave, just wouldn't leave me. So I thought, you know, I have this philosophy of just do what is in front of you and do it. Mm-hmm. I've done that all my life and I've done lots of things. So it wouldn't leave me. So I said yes. I did deliberate quite a bit. And then it actually, honestly, it grew on me more and more. And I realized, oh my goodness, this isn't just a thing to do. This is right in line with who I am, because I've been an educator, interested in education all my life. When I was in school, I always only thought of how is a teacher handling this? And then with my own children, I was really heavily involved in their education. I did everything. I homeschooled. I had them in independent school because my parents wanted to do that. And then they were also in public school. So I homeschooled. Some people homeschooled for the reason that they didn't want their kids in public school. That wasn't my reason at all. I wanted to be there when the lights went on, when they learned to read. So it's my interest in education that inspired me to do that. It was really, really hard. Really hard. So that's now I'm feeling for parents who are stuck at home and kids stuck at home, and how are they coping? So yeah, so a real interest in my career is music teaching. And so I'm one-on-one tutoring and managing piano classes as well. And I just love the whole process of learning. And I am a examiner with a conservatory and a festival adjudicator, and I also teach teachers how to teach. So I teach pedagogy, and again, this is right in line with my career. I've been teaching piano since I was 16, so many children.
I put my name on the ballot many times over the past 5.5 years that we've lived in Langley. I like to be a legitimate secondary option to the more traditional political views that are out there. One of the reasons that I decided that school board was an opportunity, I had to look at what the real role of a school trustee was, and how I could really emphasize my strengths, talk about fiscal responsibility, talk about school choice, and if a school trustee actually had any sort of leverage in that way. And so looking at the legislation, looking at what's past school trustees have been able to accomplish, I decided that definitely I was very interested in putting my name forth and giving myself as an option to the people of Langley.
Well, I'm an educator, and education is my passion. I have dreamed about being a teacher since I was a little kid. And then once I got into the classroom and started seeing some of the needs that went beyond being able to affect it in the classroom, that there were greater ways that I could help. Looking at being a trustee was one of those ways that I would be able to make a greater influence in a greater number of children and families.
I'm running for the position because I feel I can provide a great deal of expertise in the area of my experience, both in the school system and governance, and with what I continue to do within the school system. The interesting thing about a by-election is it's a very limited period of time. It's 18 months until the next full election. I think one of the challenges of moving into a position as a trustee is the learning curve that goes on. And I feel with my background in the areas that I've talked about, both within the system, within budgeting, within governance, and how the district runs, I feel I can actually step in and be contributing pretty quickly without a steep learning curve. So I'm running to participate, support student learning, and make a difference in student outcomes. And I feel I can do that effectively and quickly.
So I decided to put my name forward. Wasn't expecting the by-election, but I had decided it's been a little while, and I definitely decided I would be running in the upcoming municipal election. But I am someone that is incredibly passionate about community service. And I have spent the better part of 6+ years in this community doing a lot of volunteer work, teaching classes with newcomers, and engaged in advocacy surrounding equality and community connection and creating opportunities for neighbors to come together, organizing community events and that sort of thing. And I believe wholeheartedly that our schools, the education system, is key to a healthy community. And so it's taken, I've had a really interesting journey. I've learned a lot, and I really believe that everything I'm passionate about, my skill set, my capabilities, and my passions just align perfectly with this role. And I am definitely a passionate advocate for public education. And I believe we need more strong voices in our school districts. All too often, we are seeing, and I'm not just speaking about our own district, but other districts where it's almost like a rubber stamp. You know, no one wants to ruffle any feathers. And we don't see the strength maybe that we need to advocate for a healthy, fully funded education system. So that is what's brought me here.
I want to be a part of making School District 35 one of the best school districts in BC. I think that is obviously it's a collective feeling through parents and teachers and staff in the school district. But with me particularly, my first interaction with the school district was in 2015 when my wife and I registered our daughter Brynley for the Choice School program when Brynley was still in utero. I thought that was interesting, the way that that program works. So since then, I've been watching the school board particularly, and just some of the issues that they're having, and where I could potentially help. So I see that increasing school site acquisition charges is where I can help. I'm looking at the Willoughby land deal where the township has purchased 30 acres in preparation for a second high school and a third middle school in Willoughby. And I just feel that it's my time to step up, my time for our time, for my generation, to bring a fresh voice to the table and start bringing our vision to decisions that are going to affect my family and younger families for the next 20, 30 years.
Good answer. Okay. What do you see as the role of the District Parent Advisory Council?
Well, it's like your slogan, the role of the District Parent Advisory Council. And my wife was a PAC president for several years, and so I was very involved. And I actually—
What school was that at?
Langley Fine Arts.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Go
I
ahead.
actually got a little bit involved in DPAC around the time I ran for the trustee about 15 years ago. The role is to collect the voices of all the parents of all the students in Langley and consolidate them and be a strong voice. That's the role.
I love the District Parent Advisory Council. When I was a little girl, my mom was the president of the PTA. So
Mm-hmm.
no, the role I think is to be there, know what's going on in your kid's school, which is a philosophy I adopted when my kids were in school. I was there, I was a volunteer, know what's happening, have a voice in what's happening, just be there. Don't just send them off, but have a voice and an ear, both. Ear to what's going on and a voice to speak up when necessary.
Well, I was a member of the PAC executive at my son's elementary school for 1 year. It was more, as much as I was the vice president, I was more like volunteer number one. I wasn't overly aware of a lot of the processes, but I was so happy to be involved at that level. And of course, DPAC overlooks the needs of so many different levels of education. PACs at every level have such differentiating needs. Every student is unique, so trying to represent that at a school level is difficult enough, so trying to do it at a district level and being that voice, that advocate of that cumulative voice to the school district is challenging, but I guess that's why you guys have been doing it long enough and there's an infrastructure in place. I haven't actually attended any DPAC meetings. I've heard the response at our PAC meetings from our DPAC rep. So you guys cover a lot of ground, and I think it's very important that that you guys keep doing your hard work so that you're able to be that advocate for our students and our parents.
Oh boy, you guys, schools couldn't operate without a DPAC or PACs, period, end of story, without having the parents on board and essentially the community on board. It's really hard to educate the children. So something I've always done in my class, I've said that it's between a teacher, the student, and the parent, and you have to have that kind of trifecta of people that are coming to the table. Obviously, when you're looking beyond your classroom and you're looking at an entire district, you need to have all the parents, all the staff. You've got, there's students in there that need to have a voice, and then all the community stakeholders as well. So I think it's really important that they are involved, and thank goodness for fundraising efforts, because as we all know, the PACs provide so much to our schools. We wouldn't have the books and the technology and all the fun events that happen at the school without the PACs. So really, I see them as an integral part of the education system that we have here.
In the role of a trustee, I see DPAC as a resource. I see them as representing a very important stakeholder group, that being the parents. These people, the parents, are invested in their children's education. They come from a broad perspective of the demographic within the school district, all the way from Aldergrove right through to Walnut Grove, down to Brookswood, South Langley. They represent not only the demographic, but the interests of their children, the interests of their school. So it's very important to me that we consult with the parents. We engage with the parents whenever and however we possibly can to get their feedback, get their input on issues that are important. Strategic plan, for example, budgeting, for example, capital plan, for example. All these come through the DPAC. And to me, the DPAC plays a very critical partnership role in any of the decisions that are made to impact student learning.
I see the DPAC as this incredible representation, like a collective representation of our entire district. So I know there's important work that happens at each individual schools. That's not to discount that, but I do believe that you need some sort of mechanism to advocate further. And so that's what I see the DPAC representing. And I know as a parent, recently, I definitely reached out to our DPAC. I knew that that is the role of that organization in our district, to advocate on parents' behalfs. And it's a great opportunity to build that strength within the parent community, education, supporting projects. I view it as just this incredible source of support for parents and students and families.
The role of DPAC to me is, number one, is being able to hold the Board of Education and even higher the ministry accountable for decisions made, making sure that students and families are always at the forefront, making sure that it's always about safety and what's best for the students.
All right. Thank you very much.
So I'll just add to that as well, if you don't mind. I just want to. I really enjoy learning about the DPAC. I do not have a lot of experience in it, but what I do and what I'm learning is that it's a really great opportunity for parents to learn leadership, and that sets a really good example for their children and other children as well.
What do you see as the top priorities for parents in the Langley School District?
That's a good twist. Top priorities for parents as opposed to top priorities for the school district. Top priorities for the parents is to pause and realize that the school is in some ways more than a school. We're discovering that the school is not just education in a box in a building. It's a whole bunch of things. It's society, it's inclusion, it's a place for children to learn all those other things besides what we say is the part of the syllabus. The role of the parents is to realize that when that falls apart, they have to step up and do a bunch of pieces to A, put that back together, and B, replace the bits that are lost. So I was asked a very similar question by the Langley Teachers Association about what do you want to learn out of this? And the big learning out of this is plan A doesn't always work. So we got to be ready with plan B and plan C. And we as parents have to be ready to teach our children about sometimes plan A doesn't work and you just got to be ready.
Okay, is there anything like a particular issue or anything that you might see that might be top of mind for the parents though?
Well, it's with COVID, which is the elephant in the room. Of course, it's top of mind, but it has a lot of domino effects. A great illustration was when we had the power outages. How do you deal with power outages in COVID? Not the same way you dealt with them before COVID. How do you deal with a snowstorm during COVID? Not the same way you dealt with it before COVID. So that's my illustration of the difference between plan A and plan B. What used to work doesn't work anymore necessarily, or it needs some tweaking.
Get through COVID. Number one, that's very pressing right now. And that's something that I thought, I have an ability to collaborate with people, listen to different opinions, and come to some common good. And so I want to bring that skill to bear in handling these. We never know what's going to happen with the rules from day to day from the government. And so it's that is one thing. And then there are other things. I mean, I would go to bat for a parent who feels that they need an advocate, something that's going on with their child that just can't be resolved. I go to bat for a teacher if there's something that couldn't be resolved. I go to bat for a support worker. I'm kind of the person that picks up a cause for someone who's being mistreated, and I'll be the pit bull that doesn't let it go until it's resolved in a very nice way.
Say that number one would be school choice at this point. Right now, there are waiting lists for some very popular choice programs that I think that every student should have the ability to attend, because really we need to get our kids engaged. And if they're engaged right early in their K-12 journey, they're more likely to have success when they come out. School choice also could factor in geographically. There are some parents that are very disappointed at where their students' catchment, where they're supposed to go, and opening up more school choice will alleviate that. School choice also just within programming within the schools that we attend. I think that parents want their kids to want to go to school. That starts off early. I think every kid looks forward to going and hanging out with their friends, and then somehow that fades as they get into the later elementary years. And I'm looking at what happened to my son during the COVID restrictions, and during May and June, he was a different kid. It really affected his mental, the mental side of his academic approach to school, and all summer was nervous about going back. And suddenly September came, he was in a class with his friends, and we got our kid back. So I want to really emphasize that we want a normal classroom environment for our students. And I'm glad that our school districts, that our Ministry of Education and our provincial government has kept in-school learning, because I think it's important that kids get excited about the social aspect of learning, not just the academic side.
Safety, obviously right now with COVID, that is a huge concern for a lot of students, staff, and parents. Also walkability and being able to get to and from school safe. And then the third part of that is the sense of safety and belonging within the school. I think that there is still across BC a lot of students and families who don't feel safe sending their children to school. And I think that we need to look at ways to alleviate some of the bullying that's happening and to support the victims of bullying or any sort of discrimination. So I think that that is probably one of the biggest things that we can do, and we have the power to change as a trustee. So I would definitely be working with them and looking at ways that I can get involved in committees to help that. And then beyond that, I think parents want their kids to have a good education and a well-rounded education that really prepares them for all of the challenges of being an adult.
I think what Langley parents want to see when they, each and every day, when they drop their students off at school, is a solid foundation of good fundamental educational programming, addressing literacy, numeracy, technology. But they want to also know that their son or daughter, regardless of the grade they're in, is going to a healthy, safe, enriching environment, so that they can feel that when their student goes to school, they'll be valued, they'll be looked after. If circumstances arise, they're not going to be put into situations where they're going to feel the student is going to feel compromised or unwanted. So we have to have programs, we have to have supports for things like student mental health. That varies differently from, say, early primary to latter days of secondary. Inclusion, we have to consider all that racism. We have to deal with different abilities within a classroom. All those structures have to be in place so that that parent knows that their student is walking into an enriching, healthy environment.
So I guess I'm coming at this from a few different directions. I know just from my experience as a parent, you know, we're kind of in this uncharted territory. We're living through a pandemic. I know this is a new area, a new experience for me and for, I would say, most of us. So right now it really feels like it's almost impossible to move past that. And I think as a parent that has to be kind of getting through this and supporting our students, supporting our families, supporting our educators, our support staff, the entire district. That needs to be the lens that we view everything through for the next, hopefully short term. So I can't forget about that. I think we're mental health supports. I know personally in our family, this hasn't been an easy time. It's uncharted territory. Our kids are feeling a little bit overwhelmed, and I think supporting them is really critical. Supporting our families too. You know, if we're supporting students, we have to be supporting the families. And I mean, there's a lot of different issues, but that to me is number one. And I mean, there's issues that are close to my heart as well. I know we live in Willoughby and we're, a growing community. We will need to focus on new schools to support our community. Supports for families, ensuring that we are adequately funding and supporting all programs. Those are all issues that I view as really important.
Safety. I think that number one is safety. So safety at school and safety getting to school, as well as getting home. Working with the Township of Langley, getting sidewalks and proper pedestrian crossings is something that is vital to keeping kids safe on the roads, proper lighting, proper bus stops. So that's, yeah, definitely safety is one. Number two would be equal education. I'm hearing a lot from parents that are waiting for diagnoses for their students, for their children, that they're waiting a long time and they're having to pay out of their own pocket. I know that there's a funding model, well, change coming whenever that is coming, now with COVID probably delaying it. I would just make sure that parents are being advocated for and that they're not getting a bad deal with potentially the new prevalence model coming. So we just need to make sure that students aren't left behind, right? We need equal education for all. I think that the middle school transition can continue to maybe be a little more transparent. I know that they haven't, the transition committee hasn't sent out any kind of notice to Brookswood parents in particular since 2018. And I know that as they're waiting for the neighborhood community plans to start, or to finish, I should say, so that development can start in Brookswood, we need to make sure that the middle schools are taken care of, along with the 5 new potential elementary schools that are needed in Brookswood, so that parents aren't having to shuffle their kids when boundary changes happen because there's just not enough seats. I do also believe that getting that second high school and third middle school in Willoughby is an issue that affects Walnut Grove. It affects families that go to Fort Langley Elementary. As Walnut Grove is full, I think getting that second high school, middle school will free up some seats so that kids that are graduating out of Fort Langley Elementary can go to Walnut Grove, which is their community high school.
Okay.
The fourth question is, do you feel the board has a role to play in addressing resource inequities arising between schools due to the differing capabilities for parent communities to fundraise?
So said another way, you're asking me if I feel that the school board should be delivering exactly the same education to students in a neighborhood that's got maybe a higher net income as students in a neighborhood that has a lower net income. And the answer is the result should be the same, but the delivery might have to be different. So you might have to think about ways of getting the education delivered to people that are going to be able to access it differently. And it might mean access to computers. It might mean safe transport to the schools. And does the school board have a role to play? Absolutely it does. It already is doing some of that, and it has busing systems. It has systems that get resources to students. Does it need to play a greater role? That's something clearly the question says I have to find out and learn about. You wouldn't ask the question if it wasn't important.
The board is there. The purpose of the board is to ensure a good, well-rounded, healthy education for every student. So if some areas are lacking in the resources, then I really feel the board should fill those. That's how I see it right now. And again, it goes back to my value of taking care of those who need help. And actually that's something that grew in my why am I doing this question, and it's grown stronger and stronger, is to help those who are disadvantaged. And so I have a real heart for that. If I can help in any way, kids who are disadvantaged, kids who are from dysfunctional situations, and especially now in this crisis, well, ongoing, I don't know if you call it a crisis, it keeps going on and on. I really feel for that. So the board should provide what's needed. They're the ones that have the purse strings and allocate the funds.
I would say that no, it shouldn't have a role. I know my son's going to be attending Stafford unless something drastic changes between now and next year, and they've struggled at the PAC level. I think that really comes to the school community, and schools need to be able to draw students and draw parent participation as well. So yes, fundraising has fallen onto PACs in a heavy way, but that is, in my personal opinion, as a libertarian, I think that's a great thing, because what it does is it takes the burden off taxpayers and it puts it onto the parents who have very specific ideas of what they want their students' education to look like.
I personally think yes. I think it would be nice to look into alternative ways to share some of that wealth and funding. As we know, Langley has a number of schools that are deemed inner city. And so I think it's really important that we find ways to support some of those schools, because there's parents there that they don't have the time because they're working 2-3 jobs, single parents that they've got multiple children that they need to take care of and raise, and they just don't have the means to get out there and do the fundraising that some of the other parent groups do. And I'm not saying that there's not single families and single parents throughout the district. I'm just saying that when they are predominantly in certain areas, that we need to look at it as a whole and as a community on how we can share those resources and make sure that those kids aren't getting left behind.
Great.
That's a really interesting question, and it's certainly an impactful question, because there are definite inequities, and I feel the board has a role to play. I think that comes in the budget discussion, and the budget discussion in the context of staffing. I see where staffing supports in schools where there is inequities is important. Now, you have to balance that, because you can't go too far in promising or giving services to one sector of a school district or type of schools at the deficiency.
Very good.
Yeah, where you actually compromise education in other schools. And so when you're talking about this in terms of the budget, it has to weigh into the discussion, absolutely. And it might come in different forms. And I'll give you an example. So for example, in the Aldergrove schools, there's a community school coordinator. That's something that's unique to the Aldergrove and inner city Langley schools. But it's not necessarily the case in, say, the Willoughby schools or the Walnut Grove schools or Brookswood schools, because it's an added resource that's provided in an area that needs something more in the context of that school. Other areas are food programs, food and nourishment programs, which seem to be more prevalent in certain schools and in certain demographics than in others. So I think that needs to be addressed in the budgetary discussions. And yes, I think that there needs to be supports. They need to be carefully crafted for the area, for the school socioeconomic demographic, but I think definitely.
This is definitely an important area, and I think it's something that does need to be addressed. And I think, especially given our current situation, this is going to be, probably these gaps will continue to widen. So definitely I see the role of the board as we talked about being advocates, parent advocates at the DPAC level. I see a critical, probably the most important role is advocating for the district. And I will be bluntly honest here. Yeah. We don't value public education in this province as much as we should. It's often underfunded. I think all too often at a local level, we hear elected representatives say that our hands are tied. There's only so much that we can do. And as a trustee, I would definitely continue to advocate. I think it is a shame that parents have to fund our public education system in the manner that they do. Its effort is it's effort that could be put in other areas. So definitely, I think that the board has a role to play there.
Absolutely, the board has a responsibility to make sure that there is equal opportunity for all students in every school. I know that there are some schools do have different capacities. So making sure that the money that the ministry gives is allotted to spread out evenly so that parents don't have to pay out of their pocket. I do believe that public education should be fully funded and that PACs shouldn't have to raise more money for different programs. On a personal note, as a first responder, I'll be able to bring a little bit of experience into the trustee role as I've seen resource inequities on a personal level. 12 years first responder. Let me just gather my thoughts here.
Take your time.
Yeah, so it's important to me. I've delivered twins in one of the most remote communities in BC. And then just today I was delivering snacks to about 6 different schools in my area where I work. And it's really important that we address these inequities so that there are no children left behind.
Okay.
We're interested about how you would address the issues surrounding busing in Langley's more rural communities. Specifically, would you support extending bus service to choice programs?
So, I have a little experience with this one. I would say that busing is an access issue. And so, especially, and it's kind of tied with a bunch of other issues. Catchments, it's tied with catchments kind of strongly. It's tied with choices of parents and where they want to put their children, so choice schools and things like that. I think we have to make it available on an equitable basis. Now, does that mean to everyone in every situation at no cost? Maybe not. There's a really good discussions about what's equitable and what's fair. But I feel as a parent who's had children in the school system that I don't know that the school's busing system effectively meets the needs right now. But I don't know that we're going to have money to make it much better. My worry is we're going to run out of money for basic education when we enter COVID and budgets get tighter.
That's a tricky question. This is one of the areas where the budget can be flexible, because obviously the incoming amount is set according to how many students there are, and the outgoing is largely set because almost everyone that's being paid belongs to a union. So where is the flexibility in funding? And it can happen in busing, which is terrible, because then somebody might say, hey, we need some money, let's just cut the busing. So I think it has to be reasonable. So now I gotta listen to your question. In the rural areas, so that's where busing happens, right?
Right, yes.
Then to the choice schools.
Right, because when children are taking programs in a choice school, then it's usually out of their catchment, so.
Well, now, to be fair, now I'm going to probably lose points with somebody here, but if you choose the school, then it seems like the busing may not be provided because you have chosen that school. And so you put your name on a list and you're kind of the elite because you got in there. So I would say it shouldn't be a given. Now, I could be persuaded otherwise, but that's my top of the head answer. Is that a choice school is a choice, and that's part of the cost of it is that you may have to drive.
I got a message from a concerned parent who is living near, their student attends DW Poppy and was concerned that they were being forced to walk, that the bus service was not extended to them. And they talked about how it was an unsafe route across 56 Ave. I know that road well. It's a pretty busy road. So what is the solution? Well, we need to address why students need the transit. Do we not have enough schools in the right areas? What kind of outcomes do we want from the busing service? Do we want it to be as equitable as possible, or do we want to make sure that we're taking care of our students' safety? I definitely would just suggest that there should be an appeal process so that each and every family that feels like they're falling through the cracks has a way to get what they need out of the transportation system through the school district. And as far as extending it to choice programs, I would say, I'm going to go with on a one-to-one basis, I would say yes, but overall no, because we have an amazing township of Langley and city of Langley, and it's a very vast geographical expanse. So if you're suggesting that you want your student to go in the northwest and you live in the southeast, well, that's a bit of a stretch for me. I want you to be able to go there, but don't expect me to give your kid a cab ride. Thanks.
I 100% that we think that we do need to address the busing issues. I think that right now there is major inequity in the different school districts, especially as some areas like Walnut Grove continue to boom. And we've got the whole Willoughby area that has got lots of children in it. And then you look at somewhere like the south of Langley, like Aldergrove and Brookswood, where children are having schools shut down, whether that's an elementary school that's being closed. And those children are now being forced out of their established neighborhoods to support some of the extra schooling that's happening in the new and growing neighborhoods. I don't think that's fair. And I think that the inequity that is being caused by the distance that they have to travel is something that we definitely need to look at. I also think that choice programs play such a huge role in the well-being of so many children. We need to look at them as individuals and not just say, oh, well, isn't that nice that they can go to a choice program? There's a lot of individual circumstances that support those children going to those programs because it's the best place for them to be and grow as a learner. And so I think we can't just kind of whitewash that and say, well, they chose to go there, they need to get there themselves. We need to look at it more holistically and saying, okay, why do they need to go there? And maybe we need to look at putting some more of those choice programs closer to their area.
Great.
Well, that's a good question. And I can't, I'll be honest with you. Unless I see the budget, I can't really make a decision on that particular issue. And I'll tell you why. Because there's only one budget. There's one sum of money. And if we put money into this particular silo or this category, how's it going to impact others? The fundamental role of a trustee is to deliver sound educational programs to students. So if I put more money into busing, for example, the question is, how will that impact the money I've got available to provide the very fundamental school programs that students need to learn and to progress and be prepared for tomorrow, tomorrow's horizon, i.e. after graduation. So definitively say I'm going to promote busing to choice programs without seeing the budget and without seeing the impact of the budget that a decision like that might have, I can't really say yes or no. I think we'd have to look at that in the big picture and what that impact would be.
So this is actually, this is one of the areas, and I missed it from the previous question. I have talked about this in a campaign video. I have talked to parents on this subject, and I know this is an issue that is really important to a lot of families. And I actually just received a letter from local parents, and they were talking about their frustration around this issue and how they feel that their children's safety isn't being addressed. So I will not claim to be an expert on this issue. What I do know is that we have an issue where certain children are less safe than others going to school. The walk limits need to be addressed. So we have to do whatever we have to do to ensure our students are able to get safely to school. So I would definitely, if we need more busing, then that's what needs to happen. And we need to figure that out. We can say that it's not in the budget. I think that's not an excuse. We need to figure out what's missing here and what can be done to help these kids be safe. I think it's an important issue because it is a challenge for a lot of families. So if we're seeing that inequity, I think that's something that we have to look into. And I just received, as I mentioned, that letter yesterday, and this is definitely an important issue for me, and I will be researching more. I think we do have to look at, so if we aren't able to increase service for children, for kids that need it, we do have to kind of look at the entire system and see where the areas exist that perhaps we can streamline and ensure that everyone has access to safe transportation. And when talking about choice schools, I know as a family that lives in Willoughby, my daughter attended the fine arts school for a few years. So we, it was tough. It was, again, it was our choice. So we had to make do with the fact that there weren't buses available. So I think it's something that we have to look at the whole system. And I think it's going to be important in a lot of areas, but especially our rural areas. If we're looking at an area and judging it with walk limits that work in Surrey or Port Coquitlam, you know, or wherever, we're probably closer to an Abbotsford or a Chilliwack for our rural students. So I think it's something that needs investigation, and I think it needs to be a priority.
So as busing is not fully funded from the Ministry of Education, any kind of increase to busing will come out of the operational and capital budget. So that's going to take from, that could potentially take from other programs. So as a trustee, I would have to look at different impact reports and see where it would be financially responsible to move money from one spot to another. So choice schools specifically, that would take money out of programs and other areas such as, you know, school, just general school maintenance to provide busing for somebody that has decided to go out of their catchment area. So what I would see as something that we would have to work on would be, again, working with the township to work on infrastructure, to increase our sidewalks for safety, lighting, proper pedestrian crossing, so that the kids that may live a little bit closer to the schools aren't, that they're basically just have safe options, like riding a bike through a bike lane or walking on a proper sidewalk. I think that this would increase options. So maybe busing wouldn't be as heavily relied on.